there are several reasons for projecting soft power and to acquiring soft power. One of the key reasons is to mitigate and to deal with the so-called China threat thesis. If you are using attraction, if you are using co-optation instead of coercion, instead of force, that goes a long way in dispelling, meeting the challenge presented by what they see as the West in trying to paint China's rise as a threat. So a large part of China's soft power efforts at the state level is done to address and to reduce and to recast the narrative of the China threat thesis. And in doing so, of course, to showcase Chinese history, Chinese culture, Chinese commerce, Chinese aesthetics, and so forth to the world.
You've mentioned earlier that China's approach to accumulating soft power is a means to influence the world without coercion, right?
Hmm.
So, how does that figure in China's approach within the region, especially
Hmm.
within the contested waters? Because,
Hmm.
on
Hmm.
one hand, it is projecting this global image and building soft power, while on the other, it is there are still documented acts of aggression
Hmm.
in waters, especially for me. I'm from the Philippines, so I'm pretty aware about those
Hmm.
acts of aggression. So, how does that seeming contradiction come into
Right.
play?
That is a great question. I start off with a basic observation that soft power or using soft power does not preclude using coercive measures. If we look at some of the traditional countries that are associated with soft power, US, UK, for example, they have been more than willing to use force or coercion when it comes to it. So saying that a country uses soft power doesn't mean that they don't resort to coercion at all. That's one thing. China's attempt to cultivate or build an image of a peace-loving, open country sometimes does rub up with the fact that it pursues a more assertive actions on the ground, as you've mentioned, for example, in South China Sea. And people do frequently call out this seeming contradiction. But I stress again that the fact that using soft power doesn't mean that countries give up more blunt tools of foreign policy.
Yeah, so cultural trends like the Labubu craze show China's ability to export pop culture. Do you think
Hmm.
such phenomena can evolve into lasting sources of soft power, or are they more fleeting?
Mm. That's a very good question, and it's something that I do think about as well. I think the easy answer to that it remains to be seen. We still have to see exactly how it plays out. It certainly wasn't as fleeting as what some people initially thought. PopMart, Labubu, blind boxes, they are still going very strong. Um, and I think the Labubu craze have underlined the potential of private industry, of society, of apolitical elements of soft power and how it can go global pretty quickly with very little intervention from the state. In many ways, these are the most authentic kinds of soft power because you see the absence largely of the state, and because it's done almost on a purely commercial basis, people do not consider or think that it is threatening or suspicious. I would say the other thing to take note is that it shows that Chinese inflected or Chinese created cultural products can have global aesthetic appeal. It is not simply the fact that cultural products from the West have a complete monopoly or dominance over media, cultural, entertainment, or sporting domains, that there can be and it should be and has been challenged. And I think the Labubu product and its success shows that potential. But whether or not this represents a longer term shift into the acceptance of Chinese products or Chinese cultural products, I would say we will have to wait and see for a bit longer.
Before Logan, you come in. I wanted to ask this question. So China has invested billions into its international image and tried to project its pop culture to the rest of the world. Um, the returns is not as visible as
Hmm.
investing in maybe military power and whatnot. So, what do you think is more what do you call it? It's more feasible, like when
Hmm.
it comes to investing billions into soft power, investing billions into military power. Which
Hmm.
which one do you think China should actually really go with?
Hmm. Well, China happens to be one of those countries with a huge amount of resources. So for them, it's not an either or. They have the luxury of pursuing both, and the smart choice, as they are doing, is to pursue both. They have indeed spent billions of dollars in terms of their military. They have spent millions of dollars in various soft power projects across the world as well. And both of them can go hand in glove. Um, in my estimation, I think China's soft power endeavors have been mixed. They have produced mixed outcomes.
I'm curious, what are your thoughts about the sale of TikTok's US operations? Because do you think that's a that's a sign that China has indeed uh, asserted its soft power into the West, or do you think that's Washington trying to nip that spread of soft power right in its country?
I think it's a little bit of both, right? I think TikTok, to some policymakers in the Hill, is worrying because it has quite dramatically exploded in popularity and embedded itself in American psyche in terms of it being a normal, popular app that is used. Then it comes into questions, hard questions on okay, how are the data of Americans handled? What happens to data sovereignty? Where does data travel to? So these are real privacy, security concerns as well. If indeed the data is being used in some way, shape, or form. The other one that sits uneasily, I think, as well, is that the world has gotten so used to using Western inflected products, Facebook, Instagram, Apple, and whatnot, hardware and software for the longest time, including in America itself. And here we have an upstart, a new challenger that is not a Western American creation that has got the traction of millions and millions of people as well.
China is already wielding enormous influence within its orbit, like the recent STU, that's all growing, and the BRICS Plus coalitions. Do you think it has been successful in offering a new alternative to the Western order?
Mm. Um, at this moment, I don't think so, but it's more of a yet. I don't think so yet. It is very difficult to present an alternative. It's easy to say that the international order is fraying, it's fractured. Everyone can point to it and say that. It doesn't take a genius to figure that the international order is in problem. But it's quite another to present, okay, now that we know that it's fraying, so what? What is the alternative vision that everyone else can buy into and that you can persuade others that this is the way to go? There's a huge distance in doing that. So while China is successful in pointing out, in reinforcing some of the issues, things that are wrong with the international order today, I think less so for articulating a roadmap or positive vision of how is it going to be like and how different it is from the previous one. What I will say is where it has a bit more success is in, at the very least, corralling the global south in positioning itself as the leader of the global south. In that way, I would say through the SEO, through BRICS Plus, and even through its BRI and its multilateralism, it has done so quite successfully. It has garnered, in my mind, legitimacy as the official slash unofficial leader as the global south.
Looking ahead, what would success look like from Beijing's perspective in terms of gaining this soft power and also in the grander scheme of its
Mm,
goal of great rejuvenation?
mm. So to me, one of the tangible outcomes, if it is completely successful, if China's soft power is very high and they wield it expertly, is that nobody would think that China is a threat. They would have established themselves as a leader, if not global leadership, then at least regional leadership, and it would have the acceptance of other countries. Countries in Southeast Asia, for example, or countries in global South, broadly speaking, and the African continent, for example, will say that this is the model we want to follow. There's no hedging with the US or with other parties. This is the model I want to follow. I'm attracted to it because I believe in it. I believe it works in my interest, but I also believe in its values and norms that it is espousing. That would be how success looks like. But that's a long way off, and it's a very, very difficult position to achieve. National rejuvenation, I think China has already made great strides. If you look at where they are today compared to 10, 20 years ago, just based on the raw figures alone of economic growth, lifting people out of poverty, becoming a formidable military force, becoming one of the most influential actors in the world stage, in many ways, they have reached that. But these are things with discourse, right? You do not want to reach these goals too early because you want to be able to corral and mobilize. You want to be able to get people behind you and support you in your policies and your schemes. And that's why some of these ideas, concepts, great rejuvenation, Chinese dream, global, the four global initiatives are a little vague